start our discussion of elements and compounds, we're going to briefly go back to Chapter 1, and we're going to focus in on one particular part of this chart. So we're going to go back and we're just going to focus on this area here, our pure substances. So if you want, you can even flip back to this page in your notes and just kind of continue this chart where you already started writing, or you could start a new page under Chapter 3. So our pure substances, elements and compounds, can actually be divided even further. So there are two types of elements. We have atomic elements, and we have molecular elements. So what do you think the difference between these two types of elements is? You can kind of tell based on the names. So atomic elements are when an element exists as one single atom. So what are some examples? We have neon, argon, helium. Then a lot of the metals as well. So the ones that I really want you to know for now, though, are the noble gases. So those are in the column to the farthest right on the periodic table. Molecular elements, on the other hand, are when elements exist in a molecular form. And think back to our previous lessons, what that means is that you have multiple atoms covalently bonded together. So the atoms of a single element are linked by covalent bonds. And the key here, what distinguishes this between what we consider to be a compound, is that the atoms are all the same element. So most of the ones we're going to look like here are what are called diatomic elements. So diatomic meaning two atoms, and these are the ones I want you to memorize. Later on in the semester, we're going to go back and start studying why certain atoms are diatomic, but for now I just want you to memorize which ones are which. This is going to help us with naming compounds in the next few lessons. So the ones that I want you to memorize are N2, O2, F2, Cl2, Br2, I2, and H2. And again, we're going to go back later to talk about why certain atoms why certain atoms form diatomic, molecular elements, while others just remain as atomic elements. There are also some other types of molecular elements that aren't diatomic. They could contain more than two atoms. And there are only two of them that I particularly want you to know for this class. And the ones that I want you to know are P4, so 4 phosphorus atoms, and S8. And again, there are others, but those are the ones that I want you to know for this class in particular. So those are our elements, and remember the elements are made of only one type of atom. And on the other hand, we have our compounds, which are multiple types of atoms covalently, or ionically or covalently, bonded together. And depending on the type of bonding, that is going to be our two different types. So we have molecular compounds, just like we have molecular elements. And we have ionic compounds. And the difference between these depends on the type of bond that we have. So starting with our molecular compounds, oops. This got deleted, let me rewrite that. So we have molecular or ionic compounds, and again, they depend on the types of bonds that are involved. So for our molecular compounds, we have different types of atoms that are covalently bonded together. And those are things that we recognize many of these already. H2O, which is kind of our go-to example, is a molecular compound. We also have C6H6. We used this in a prior example. That's called benzene. CCl4, I think that was used in one of our practice problems. Carbon dioxide, CO2, is also a molecular element. Or sorry, molecular compound, excuse me. Ionic compounds, on the other hand, are not usually called molecules because they don't have covalent bonds. So instead we call these formula units. And these are going to be a metal and a non-metal combined. So, for example, we have NaCl, LiF, MgCl2. And remember that these are going to be our positively charged cations and our negatively charged anions that are interacting with each other. So that would be Na plus and Cl minus, Li plus and F minus, and Mg2 plus. This one has a 2 plus charge, which means that we need 2 Cl minuses to balance that out to make it neutral. So let's take a look at some of the differences between these again. So we have these two molecular labels, one for elements, one for compounds. And what those have in common is that those are both only nonmetals. So nonmetals bonding with nonmetals. On the other hand, these ionic compounds are going to be a metal and a nonmetal. So whenever you're trying to decide or figure out whether something is ionic or molecular, you want to look to see, is it a metal or is it two nonmetals or is it a metal bonded with a nonmetal? So here's a little bit of practice. I want you to classify each substance as an atomic element, molecular compound, or ionic compound. Put your answers in the comments section, and we can discuss at a later date.